Murder, scandal, fame, justice. Sound familiar? It should. Because while Chicago the Musical is set in the Roaring Twenties, its story is just as relevant today. Manipulative lawyers, media-fueled trials, scandals that turn criminals into celebrities. What if I told you that Chicago isn't just a musical? It's a mirror. This is Storytime with Belinda. I'm Belinda, and let's take a deep dive into how Chicago the Musical isn't just a story from the past, but a chilling reflection of the present. Chicago, more than just a musical. For nearly 50 years, Chicago, the musical has dazzled audiences with its sultry jazz numbers, sharp satire, and compelling commentary on crime and media sensationalism. With its signature all that jazz style, the show transports us to the Roaring Twenties, a time of prohibition, excess, and scandal. But beneath the glitz and glamour lies something much darker, a world where crime sells, justice is a performance, and public opinion is more powerful than the truth. Originally a 1926 stage play by journalist Maureen Dallas Watkins, Chicago was inspired by real-life murder trials she covered in the crime-obsessed streets of 1920s Chicago. Decades later, Broadway legends Bob Fosse, John Kander, and Fred Ebb turned it into the show we know today, a cynical, high-energy spectacle where killers become celebrities and courtrooms turn into stages. The themes of Chicago, manipulating the media, the power of public image, and the blurred line between crime and entertainment, were shocking in the 1920s. But if we look around today, not much has changed. In an age of viral court cases, social media scandals, and influencers who thrive on controversy, Chicago feels more relevant than ever. This isn't just a musical, it's a mirror to the real world. So, let's step behind the curtain and explore the real-life Chicago, where murder meets fame. The courtroom is a stage, and justice is just another act in the show. The glamorous murderesses at the heart of Chicago, the musical, Roxy Hart and Velma Kelly, are not just fictional creations. They were inspired by two real women, Beulah Annan and Belva Gartner, whose dramatic trials in 1924 captivated the city of Chicago. Their crimes, personalities, and manipulations of the legal system laid the foundation for the show's most iconic characters. Beulah Annan was a young, beautiful woman with a taste for excitement and a desire to escape the mundane life of a housewife. Originally from Kentucky, she married a hard-working yet dull mechanic named Albert Annan and moved to Chicago, where she soon grew restless. Beulah sought more than domestic life. She wanted romance, luxury, and, above all, attention. On April 3rd, 1924, Beulah shot her lover, Harry Kalstedt, in her bedroom. The details of the crime were as hazy as one of Chicago's jazz club nights. Beulah claimed they had been drinking together when an argument erupted. She alleged that Harry had threatened to leave her, and in a moment of passion, she grabbed her husband's pistol and fired. What happened next, however, was pure theatricality. Beulah didn't immediately call the police. Instead, she put on a record, Hula Lou, and listened to it on repeat for hours while Harry bled out on the floor. When the authorities finally arrived, Beulah spun a tale of self-defense, claiming she was a wronged woman who had no choice but to protect herself. The press, enchanted by her beauty and tragic story, painted her as an innocent victim rather than a cold-blooded killer. The newspapers described her as the prettiest murderess ever to be held in Chicago, and her photogenic appearance turned her into a media sensation. Much like Roxy Hart in Chicago, Beulah knew exactly how to play the press. She changed her story multiple times, from self-defense to an accidental shooting. She wept in court, played the part of a helpless woman, and wore stylish outfits that made her appear more like a movie star than a criminal. And it worked. Despite overwhelming evidence of her guilt, the jury acquitted her after just a few hours of deliberation. But Beulah's story did not end in a Hollywood-style happy ending. Shortly after her release, she left her loyal husband, the man who had paid for her high-profile legal defense. Just a few years later, she faded into obscurity and died of tuberculosis in 1928. Unlike Roxy Hart, Beulah never found the fame she so desperately craved. If Beulah Annan embodied the naive, fame-hungry Roxy Hart, then Belva Gartner was the hardened, jazz-age femme fatale who became Velma Kelly. A former cabaret singer and socialite, Belva was no stranger to drama. Known for her fiery personality and extravagant lifestyle, she had a reputation for attracting both trouble and wealthy men. On March 11th, 1924, Belva was found in her car, covered in blood. Nearby, the body of her lover, Walter Law, was slumped over in the driver's seat, shot through the head. A bottle of gin was found in the car, and Belva, clearly intoxicated, had no clear memory of the events that had unfolded. Belva's defense was simple. She couldn't remember what had happened. She admitted that she and Walter had been out drinking, but she insisted that if she had killed him, she had no recollection of doing so. Unlike Beulah Annan, Belva didn't play the part of the helpless, innocent girl. Instead, she leaned into her reputation as a bold, independent woman who refused to conform to societal expectations. The newspapers had a field day with Belva's case. They called her the most stylish murderess in Chicago, commenting on her fashionable courtroom appearances and devil-may-care attitude. When asked about her thoughts on the trial, Belva famously quipped, "Gin and guns, either one is bad enough, but together they get you in a dickens of a mess, don't they?" Her words only added to her legend. Like Velma Kelly in Chicago, Belva had a tough, street-smart confidence that made her irresistibly intriguing to the public. Her defense attorney painted her as a tragic woman caught in a dangerous affair, and despite the evidence against her, she was acquitted. Belva's life after the trial was quieter than her days as a media darling, but unlike Beulah, she managed to live a long life. She eventually remarried one of her ex-husbands and remained out of the public eye until her death in 1965. The stories of Beulah Annan and Belva Gartner were so sensational that they caught the attention of journalist Maureen Dallas Watkins, who covered their trials for the Chicago Tribune. Watkins was both fascinated and appalled by how the media turned these women into celebrities rather than criminals. Her satirical play, Chicago, was a direct response to the way justice could be manipulated by charm, beauty, and good publicity. Decades later, Chicago, the musical, would amplify these themes, transforming Beulah and Belva into Roxy and Velma, two women who turned murder into a form of entertainment. The real-life events that inspired them may have taken place in the 1920s, but their story remains strikingly relevant today. From crime documentaries that turn killers into celebrities to high-profile trials that become media spectacles, the same forces that allowed Beulah and Belva to walk free are still at play. The blurred line between justice and entertainment that Chicago critiques isn't just historical fiction, it's a phenomenon that continues to unfold in real time. The dazzling, satirical world of Chicago paints the legal system not as a place of justice, but as a stage, one where charm, manipulation, and public perception often outweigh cold, hard facts. While Chicago is set in the roaring 1920s, the phenomenon it portrays is anything but outdated. Throughout history, high-profile court cases have turned into full-blown media circuses, where trials became spectacles, defendants became celebrities, and justice was often overshadowed by public fascination. From Beulah Annan and Belva Gartner to modern-day cases, the question remains, when the public watches a trial like a reality show, does justice ever truly prevail? Few trials have captured the world's attention like the murder case against O.J. Simpson. The former football star and actor was accused of brutally murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman, in 1994. From the moment the case began, it was clear that this was no ordinary trial. It was entertainment. Millions of Americans tuned in daily, mesmerized by the twists and turns of the case. Every detail, from the infamous slow-speed Bronco chase to the moment O.J. struggled to put on the bloody glove in court, became pop culture history. The media turned the trial into a battle of narratives. Was O.J. a cold-blooded murderer or a victim of racial injustice? The prosecution had overwhelming evidence, yet the defense, led by Johnnie Cochran, famously argued, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." The jury found O.J. not guilty, and the trial became a textbook example of how legal strategy, media coverage, and public opinion could shift the scales of justice. Like Roxy Hart, O.J. played the system to his advantage, transforming from an accused murderer into a tragic, persecuted figure. His case proved that trials in America were no longer just about law, they were about performance. Another case that turned into a media frenzy was the trial of Casey Anthony, a Florida woman accused of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee, in 2008. The disappearance of Kaylee gripped the nation, and when Casey's web of lies unraveled, the public was convinced she was guilty. Casey's trial had all the elements of a scandalous crime drama: a young, attractive defendant, a missing child, a dysfunctional family, and a defense strategy full of shocking twists, including the claim that Casey's father had covered up Kaylee's accidental drowning. Much like Roxy Hart, Casey seemed eerily unemotional at times, smiling in court as if she were in the spotlight rather than on trial for her daughter's death. The media painted her as a modern-day femme fatale, a young woman who prioritized partying over motherhood, reinforcing the narrative that she was guilty. Yet, in a stunning verdict, Casey Anthony was acquitted of murder, leaving the public in disbelief. The trial had been less about forensic evidence and more about creating a compelling story. As in Chicago, the courtroom had transformed into a place where perception mattered more than reality. Amanda Knox, an American exchange student in Italy, was accused of murdering her roommate, Meredith Kercher, in 2007. The case became an international media sensation, not only because of its gruesome nature, but because of the way Amanda was portrayed. Nicknamed Foxy Knoxy by the press, Amanda was depicted as a seductive, remorseless femme fatale. The prosecution argued that she had murdered Meredith in a twisted sex game gone wrong, despite a lack of direct evidence linking her to the crime scene. The trial, retrials, and appeals dragged on for nearly a decade, with Amanda being convicted, acquitted, convicted again, and finally exonerated by Italy's Supreme Court. Throughout the ordeal, she was vilified, sexualized, and turned into a spectacle, much like Velma Kelly in Chicago. Amanda's case showed how the media could craft a narrative and sway public perception, even in the absence of conclusive proof. It raised the question, in a world where trials become entertainment, does the truth even matter? Unlike past cases where newspapers and television controlled the narrative, the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial unfolded in the age of social media. What started as a courtroom battle between two Hollywood stars quickly spiraled into a global spectacle. Live streamed to millions, the trial became interactive entertainment. Fans created TikToks, memes, and conspiracy theories, dissecting every moment in real time. Depp, much like Billy Flynn in Chicago, crafted a compelling public image, a misunderstood, wronged man fighting for his reputation. Heard, meanwhile, was cast as the villain, and the internet delighted in tearing her down. In the end, the court awarded Depp damages, but the real power of the trial wasn't in the verdict. It was in the way it highlighted how modern trials are shaped by public opinion. Just as Velma and Roxy turned their crimes into a show, Depp and Heard's courtroom battle became viral content, proving that in the digital age, justice is often a matter of who controls the narrative. The trials of Beulah Annan and Belva Gartner were not unique. History has repeatedly shown that justice and spectacle are deeply intertwined. Whether it's the Jazz Age, the 1990s, or the TikTok era, high-profile trials captivate the world not because of legal proceedings, but because they reflect human fascination with crime, fame, and morality. Chicago, the musical, satirizes this reality, showing how defendants can become stars, lawyers can be masterful showmen, and guilt or innocence can be overshadowed by the right performance. In today's world, where true crime dominates entertainment and social media trials shape public perception, Chicago's message is more relevant than ever. Justice is no longer just about facts. It's about the story that people believe. In Chicago, the musical, Billy Flynn is not just a lawyer. He's a master manipulator, a showman who understands that trials are not won with evidence, but with spectacle. He transforms Roxy Hart from an accused murderer into a sympathetic, media darling victim. He crafts a story so compelling that the jury ignores the facts, captivated by the drama instead. But Billy Flynn is not just a fictional character. He is a reflection of real-life defense attorneys who have mastered the art of persuasion, distraction, and emotional manipulation. In high-profile trials, skilled lawyers often divert attention away from damning evidence by creating alternative narratives, exploiting media coverage, and appealing to jurors' biases. One of the most effective ways defense attorneys deflect from the evidence is by crafting a powerful counter-narrative. Instead of allowing the prosecution to define the case, they rewrite the story, sometimes even turning the victim into the villain. In the O.J. Simpson's case, his dream team, instead of focusing on the mountain of forensic evidence against Simpson, his attorneys reframed the trial as a battle against racial injustice. They painted the LAPD as corrupt and racist, shifting the jury's attention away from blood evidence and DNA. In the Casey Anthony case, Casey's defense team claimed that her father, George Anthony, covered up Kaylee's accidental drowning, adding a sensational and emotionally complex twist that created doubt, despite no physical evidence supporting it. By offering jurors an alternative version of events, one full of intrigue and emotion, defense attorneys create reasonable doubt, even when the facts seem overwhelming. Another classic strategy is to put the victim on trial instead of the defendant. By highlighting past mistakes, character flaws, or personal struggles, lawyers make jurors question whether the victim truly deserves their sympathy. In the Amanda Knox trials, prosecutors and media in Italy painted Knox as a promiscuous, deceitful femme fatale, focusing on her behavior rather than forensic evidence. In the Kobe Bryant case, the defense team scrutinized the victim's sexual history, raising doubts about her credibility despite the forensic evidence. This strategy works because it preys on societal biases, especially those against women. Much like how Billy Flynn manipulates public perception of Roxy Hart, real-life defense attorneys shape how victims are seen, making jurors more willing to dismiss evidence. In Chicago, the media plays a crucial role in swaying public perception. Billy Flynn ensures that Roxy gets glowing press coverage, securing public sympathy before the trial even begins. The same tactics are used in real cases, where defense teams carefully manage media narratives to influence potential jurors. In the Depp versus Heard trial, Depp's legal team knew that social media would play a role in shaping public perception. As the trial unfolded, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter flooded with pro-Depp content, making Heard seem like the villain, even before the verdict was reached. Before his trial, Weinstein hired a crisis PR firm to plant sympathetic articles, attempting to cast doubt on his accuser's credibility. By shaping the media's portrayal of a case, lawyers can turn the tide of public opinion, sometimes influencing courtroom outcomes. The courtroom is often treated like a stage, with lawyers using dramatic gestures, rehearsed one-liners, and emotional appeals to sway jurors. Johnny Cochran's "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." This single phrase, referring to O.J. Simpson trying on the glove, became legendary. Despite overwhelming DNA evidence, the jury latched onto the spectacle of that moment. Defense teams encourage defendants to cry on the stand, present themselves as victims, or break down at key moments, knowing jurors are swayed by emotions. Billy Flynn's musical number, Razzle Dazzle, captures this perfectly. The lawyer's job isn't just to argue, it's to entertain. When the evidence is overwhelming, another tactic is to introduce an alternative suspect or theory, making the jury question whether the right person is even on trial. In the Scott Peterson trial, Peterson's defense suggested that unknown kidnappers could have murdered his wife Lacey, despite no evidence supporting the claim. The Menendez brothers' attorneys successfully shifted the focus away from their brutal crime, framing them as victims of parental abuse. By planting doubt in jurors' minds, even baseless theories can prevent a conviction. Lawyers in high-profile cases don't just argue, they perform. Like Billy Flynn, they dazzle, misdirect, and manipulate, making trials more about perception than facts. In a world where courtroom theatrics can outweigh evidence, Chicago, the musical remains disturbingly accurate. Trials are not just about truth, they're about who tells the best story. In Chicago, the musical, the courtroom is a stage, and the verdict is shaped by public perception rather than hard facts. Billy Flynn understands that what people believe matters more than the truth, a concept that resonates even more today, where social media serves as both judge and executioner. In the age of cancel culture, where accusations alone can ruin reputations, the public trial has moved beyond the courtroom. Cancel culture, at its core, is about social and career consequences for perceived wrongdoing, whether criminal, ethical, or simply controversial. Sometimes, it's a powerful tool for accountability, exposing abusers and demanding justice. Other times, it spirals into mob mentality, where careers and lives are destroyed based on allegations rather than evidence. Like Roxy Hart and Velma Kelly, who manipulate the press to stay in the spotlight, many public figures today battle for control over their own narratives, knowing that the court of public opinion can be just as dangerous as a legal trial. In the past, a scandal would play out in newspapers and television. Now, social media is the judge, jury, and executioner. A single tweet, viral post, or a leaked video can lead to immediate backlash, often before any legal proceedings take place. Unlike a courtroom, where evidence is presented and debated, cancel culture operates on impulse, spreading outrage and condemnation before the facts are fully known. In real courtrooms, cases take months or years to unfold. On social media, a person can go from beloved to despised overnight with trending hashtags like #cancel, name. No defense allowed. While a legal trial ensures the accused gets a chance to defend themselves, social media trials rarely wait for explanations. The moment an accusation surfaces, the public decides the verdict instantly. Permanent stains. Even if someone is later cleared, accusations stick forever. Billy Flynn ensures that Roxy stays relevant because he knows that the media doesn't care about truth, only about the most interesting story. This mirrors real life, where the initial scandal gets the most attention, while later clarifications are ignored. Cancel culture was born out of a need for accountability, particularly in the wake of movements like #MeToo, which exposed serial abusers. But not all cases are equal, and sometimes the punishment outweighs the crime. Just as Billy Flynn twists the truth to craft a compelling courtroom drama, social media users often take accusations at face value. Some people even weaponize cancel culture for personal vendettas. What started as domestic abuse allegations for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard turned into one of the most polarizing cancel culture events in history. Heard initially gained public sympathy, but when evidence surfaced suggesting mutual abuse, the tide turned. Depp was dropped from major projects, and Heard faced extreme online backlash. The case showed how social media could act as a courtroom, influencing real-life consequences. In 2018, director James Gunn was fired from Disney after old offensive tweets resurfaced. Though he had apologized years earlier, he was still canceled overnight. The outcry against his firing was so strong that Disney rehired him months later, a rare reversal in cancel culture. Kevin Hart lost his opportunity to host the 2019 Oscars after homophobic tweets from over a decade earlier were dug up. Even after apologizing, the backlash didn't stop. These examples echo the themes in Chicago, where public perception is everything and people are often judged not on who they are today, but on a single moment of controversy. Cancel culture isn't always about justice. It's often about entertainment. Watching someone fall from grace feeds public fascination, much like how the press obsesses over Roxy and Velma's trials. Some celebrities, like Doja Cat, have been canceled multiple times, only to make comebacks because their controversies keep them in the spotlight. Just like Roxy craves attention, many modern scandals are amplified because people enjoy the spectacle. Even when cancel culture holds real abusers accountable, the public fascination with destruction overpowers the pursuit of truth. Chicago. The musical is more relevant today than ever. The sensationalism, the manipulation, the hunger for fame, all of it reflects the modern obsession with crime, scandal, and cancel culture. Just as Billy Flynn crafts stories to control the courtroom, Today's influencers, celebrities, and public figures must carefully manage their narratives to survive the digital age. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We are all part of the spectacle. Every time we click on a headline about a celebrity's downfall, we contribute to the same media frenzy that kept Roxy and Velma in the spotlight. Every time we jump to conclusions about someone accused of wrongdoing, we act like the audiences in Chicago, cheering one moment, condemning the next. Every time we obsess over true crime stories, treating real tragedies as entertainment, we mirror the way the press in Chicago turns murder trials into showbiz. It's easy to blame the media, the legal system, or social media for turning everything into a circus, but we're the ones buying tickets to the show. True crime podcasts, Netflix documentaries, and YouTube deep dives on real-life murder cases have skyrocketed in popularity. We devour the details of crimes, court cases, and conspiracy theories as if they were scripted dramas. Celebrity scandals dominate the news, often more than world events. We mock, we speculate, and we take sides, just like the people who idolized Roxy Hart, ignoring the fact that she killed a man. The internet encourages mob mentality, where public trials unfold in real time. We don't just watch, we participate, amplifying outrage, digging up old mistakes, and demanding justice without waiting for facts. The reason Chicago still resonates today is because human nature hasn't changed. We still love a villain, but only if they're entertaining. We still love a redemption story, but only if it's dramatic enough. We still judge others quickly, but hate being judged ourselves. Just as Billy Flynn says, if Jesus Christ had lived in Chicago today, and if they had covered him as a crime, folks would still be talking about it. The truth is, people have always loved a scandal, a crime, a fall from grace, and they always will. The final message of Chicago is chilling because it doesn't just expose the corruption of the legal system or the media, it exposes us. Because when the next scandal breaks, the next true crime case goes viral, or the next celebrity trial takes over the headlines, we'll all do the same thing we've always done. We'll watch, we'll speculate, and we'll beg for more. Razzle dazzle. And they'll beg you for more. Murder, fame, and manipulation. What was true in the 1920s is still true today. The only difference? The stage is bigger, the audience wider, and the stakes higher. We love a good scandal. We follow every update, pick sides, and turn trials into entertainment. But at what cost? Are we holding people accountable, or just putting on a show? Are we seeking justice, or just a good story? In Chicago, the show must go on. In real life, it never stops. Let me know what you think. Are we living in Chicago? Drop a comment below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like and subscribe for more.